What I have focused on is computer science education. I think every child should have access to coding at school, and we don't have that in California. I think it's maybe less than half of high schools offer computer science.
Wow.
And this is California, right? But they're not being trained to be the creators of technology in the future. And I've always been about empowering young people to be able to create and to be future entrepreneurs and engineers. That's been my focus. And so last year in the budget, we did get some funding for like computer science.
Hello and welcome again to another episode of Sacktown Talks. Today we're glad to be joined again by Assemblywoman Luz Rivas. Luz, thanks for joining us. How's it going?
It's all going well.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I'm glad you could make the walk over here today. You avoided the rain, hopefully. And,
yes, I see trees down along the way, but I'm glad it's not raining.
It was the construction at first that made it difficult, but now you're right. Yeah, it's kind of like a video game, like Frogger, right? You got to jump over the tree. Avoid the rain. So
yes, a lot of streets closed and blocked.
Exactly. So. Not easy being a member today when you have to walk from the new building to the Capitol and back and forth, right?
People want like a little shuttle or like golf carts.
Exactly. You're going to need like a covered, umbrellas, sergeants with umbrellas. So yeah, it's difficult. So new week, new year. So kind of how's your year started off, and kind of what are some of the things you've gotten into so far this year?
Yeah, so far so good. I'm excited. I represent a new district now.
Let's hear about that.
70% of my old district. So I'm from the San Fernando Valley in Los Angeles. It's where I grew up. So it's great to represent, my home, my community. But most of it is the same.
So like what cities embody the San Fernando Valley?
It's all the city of Los Angeles and the city of San Fernando.
Okay.
But within the city of Los Angeles, there's communities that, like Pacoima, North Hollywood, Sylmar, Sun Valley. They're all communities of LA.
Oh, so they're not cities, they're community. Okay.
I mean, we refer to them as cities, but they're actually communities of the city of Los Angeles.
Okay,
our mayor is Mayor Bass.
Right.
So.
So you have parts of Hollywood?
North Hollywood.
North
Hollywood, yeah.
And then just up above there.
To Sylmar, which the northern city of LA limits.
Mm-hmm. Oh, nice. Don't know a lot of the movie stars live there now, don't they? Is that the place to be?
Not necessarily. Not in my district, but yeah.
Just want to Encino. Where's that?
That's another part of the San Fernando Valley. Jesse Gabriel, Assemblymember Gabriel, represents.
He's got that part.
He lives there too. Yeah. So
there's two San Fernando valleys.
Yes, I'm the other San Fernando.
All right.
The better part.
They used to make fun of the valley. Is it still that way?
I don't know, but yeah, when I was a kid, because of that film, the movie Valley Girl, is that what it's called? Or the way people talk.
Are you a Valley girl?
I'm from the Valley.
Yeah.
I'm a Valley girl.
Wow.
Yeah, definitely a Valley girl.
Embody that, right?
Yes, I own it.
Exactly. So, today we had the big budget announcement. Governor Newsom came out with his unveiling of his January budget. Have you had time to digest it and kind of look at it? I saw you tweet some thoughts already. So
yes,
I'm thinking maybe...
I have. I mean, my priorities have been and continue to be, homelessness. It's I think the number one priority in the state,
right.
But especially for the county and city of Los Angeles. And, of course, the environment and climate, because I'm chair of natural resources, always follow those investments. And so I know a little bit so far. I've been in meetings, but I talked to the governor's staff earlier about the natural resources budget. And then my team and I talked about homelessness.
Right.
And we have plans to introduce legislation with a group of advocates focused on accountability and homelessness funding.
I thought that was interesting because he in his budget he talked about, I guess, accountability of the funds, like tracking them or keeping tabs on them, and that's something you kind of mentioned in your tweet too. Of accountability is key, and it's kind of interesting. Is like in this last election cycle, we've had a lot of people trying to push funding for homelessness and stuff like that. And it's kind of come to this point where we've had all the money and we still haven't made a dent in it. So maybe money's not the problem. Kind of what is the solution? Given that we've spent all this money, it doesn't seem to help at all. Like what is the key solution kind of dealing with this?
One thing, I think the money has helped, but the issue is homelessness. More people are falling into homelessness, right? So I have visited in my district and in Los Angeles, success stories of formerly homeless individuals and families that are now permanently housed. There's lots of great organizations and, city and county working together, to get people housed.
Right.
But it's still visible to us, right? We drive under a freeway overpass and we see homeless encampments there, right? So our constituents, and I think a lot of legislators here, feel like, wait, I still see it. So it doesn't feel like this funding is being well spent. Right. I think this problem requires all of us to be working together. The state, like yesterday, I met with our new mayor's team, Mayor Bass from the city of LA. And that's one of her number one priorities is working on homelessness. And she wants to work with state legislators to see how, we can collaborate.
Right. There's always this talk about homelessness and housing. And they kind of go hand in hand. And it was always kind of tough for me to put together of like, how's this homeless person going to get a house? But then somebody explained to me, it's kind of like there's like a backlog, right, of homes. And so there's people living in apartments now that want to move into a home, but they can't afford one or they can't find one. And so now they're living in an apartment. And basically the apartments have a trickle down effect where the homeless people who could afford maybe a low income apartment, there's no vacancies because that's being taken by someone in this kind of backlog who's looking to move up the housing pyramid.
We definitely have a housing production issue, right? Like, we're not building enough housing. Some of my colleagues, have focused their work here in Sacramento on housing production, right? And because that's part of the issue, right? California's not building enough housing, and sometimes it's cities that don't want it, or residents, but that's not always the case. I think.
Well, and it's tough because supplies and land is expensive, right?
Yes.
And we had this great inflation and things like that. So it's not, interest rates are really high. So there's definitely.
In my district, in Los Angeles, the part of LA that I represent is cheaper relative, to the rest of the city. Right. So we do get a lot of.
So how much is a home in your district? Like a 3-bedroom, 2-bath?
Like 700,000, 750.
Right.
But it's low compared to the rest of the city.
It is 2, 3, 4,
I remember when I used to think
that
was like, wow, you're a millionaire if you own that.
Right.
And now, homes, 750s, condos maybe for 600.
Which is crazy, like that price at 6-7% interest if you have good credit.
Yeah.
That's just, not affordable, right?
Like, and what a lot of people in my district or families do in my district, there's multiple families in one single family home. Right. So they're called single family homes, but there's 3 families that live in one and just, share the mortgage payment.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. As you kind of talked about, you've been reappointed chair of natural resources. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Kind of what led you to kind of have interest in that committee and kind of, draws you to kind of be the chair there?
This committee has a large jurisdiction and I think
it's a very broad term, natural resources.
Yes. Yeah. So it's a big committee that, like I said, the jurisdiction I think are very important issue areas. In our state, California has led on climate legislation. The world looks at what California is doing.
Right.
When I visited the UN Climate Change Conference, I went to Scotland last year, or almost 2 years ago. Other countries wanted to meet with California.
Right.
We're like a subnational. We're not representing the United States, but our delegation, they want to meet with us because they want to know what's next. They follow legislation from California on anything environmental or in climate. And so I think that's what makes it exciting is that I feel like, we set the tone for the nation on what's next.
It's interesting. You were talking to Melissa Hurtado a couple of weeks ago, and she was just coming back from Egypt from one of those conferences.
Yes.
And we were like, so does anybody have any great ideas out there? Anybody else in the world saying any answers out there? And she's like, no, they're all looking to us for answers. And
yes.
I was like, well, we should have the conference here then.
Yeah. So it's I think I realized it back then when I went, and I didn't go to Egypt this year for that, but in Scotland, it was eye-opening for me that they're just like, okay, what are you doing? What's next? And they know a lot about what we've done over the years.
Right.
You know, even before I was here, right? I mean, you know, legislation, climate bills, you know, over the last maybe 15 years, I'll say.
So I guess for our listeners who don't know, you went to MIT, right?
Yes.
And you have an engineering background.
Electrical engineering.
Electrical engineering background. So you have a very technical background. You know this stuff. So when you're like analyzing a lot of this green energy stuff, are you able to kind of like, I guess, do like some math and look at it and be like, you know, this doesn't make sense.
Yeah, instead of doodling, I'm writing equations on the bill analyses.
There's like this great YouTube channel. There's like this guy who does engineering explained. And he'll look like a Tesla semi. Like, does a Tesla semi make sense? And he'll do like all the math and look at the battery and the kilowatt per hours and compare it to diesel and cost breakdowns. And, you know, it's a nice little 10-minute video. And you're like, oh, that's interesting. Like, do you do stuff like that? Are you able to kind of look at the levels?
Sometimes, not all the time, you know, but you do. I think, you know, being trained as an engineer and I was an engineer professionally too, out of college. You know, I think we think differently, right? More logical, and there's a process for everything.
Right.
And so I think I do bring that to the legislature.
Yeah, because like, I don't know, it always seems like maybe some of the stuff that we're always being sold is kind of like snake oil. Like, you know, we're always talking about like, solar, wind, hydrogen, natural gas. Like, you know, what's the answer? Nuclear, like, what's the answer?
Yeah,
like,
and I, sometimes I do feel that. And last year, there were some bills that, you know, propose a solution. And I'm like, would that actually work? Like, or that might be too expensive.
Right.
For the return, we're not going to get our return on the investment. Right. And so I think of what goes into, you know, building and constructing things and how much I think it would be and how complicated it is.
Right. Like, yeah.
And then I'm like, for this little, you know, what's the output? Hardly anything. That's how I think sometimes. I'm like, no, it sounds great. You know, people are like, it sounds great. I'm like, but does it work? Is it effective?
Yeah.
You know, it's just a lot of money or we have to change policy for this.
Yeah. And it's especially on green energy, there's like always two sides. And you're always like, okay, who are you funded by? Like, what's the truth here?
And that's the thing. It's also thinking about that. Wait, why are they coming to me?
Right.
You know, what's in it for them? And I understand, you know, a business, any type of business, their goal is to be in business and to make money.
Right.
I don't blame them, you know, but then I think our job as legislators is to, you know, take all of that information and make decisions based on, well, I know why this company wants this because they don't want to go out of business, but that's not the right thing for California.
Right. And it seems like we have these like two competing agendas, right? Like we want to be green and clean and independent. And there's a belief that maybe we could do that tomorrow. If there wasn't enough will and enough buy-in, like maybe we could be as comfortable and happy as we are today with this kind of new technology. And then there's this other argument of it's not even possible. Like it's pie in the sky. Like, yeah, we're trying to get there, but it's not feasible today. Yeah.
Well, I remember when I was in college, when we would talk about electric vehicles, they seemed impossible. They seemed like that's going to take so long, right? I mean, now people have EVs and chargers and, you know, we're getting there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
And it's just kind of like, you know, we were talking with Damon Connolly earlier, like, you know, the Ford F-150 Lightning or whatever, like all of us up here had our power out, right? And
that could power your house.
Yeah. And like everyone's trying to get generators or trying to figure that out. And it just, you know, it's an impossible task. But if I could just plug my car in and it could power my house or I could drive somewhere at the same time, like how convenient, like why isn't every electric car like that? Doesn't that solve like a lot of our grid issues in some senses?
Yeah.
If every electrical car was a battery backup as well.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah. So it's a lot of interesting stuff out there.
Yeah. And I think, you know, we're solving some issues, but then maybe creating new ones, you know, like I think I was just talking to my team about electric vehicle batteries and the need to have some way of recycling them. You know, soon, you know, with increase in EVs, you know, we're going to have these batteries that don't work anymore. What are we going to do with them? Right. And what do people do? There aren't any programs right now to recycle them or are they recyclable? You know, all these questions that we're solving one issue, but then creating
like,
another.
Are we solving one? We're just like moving one pile to another.
We move it. And I mean, but that's what's fun about this work, right? That's what I like.
No, definitely. So, committees start up in March. You guys are probably getting together now, kind of working on your agendas. Kind of what are some of the stuff you guys are talking about, or advocates are coming to you right now saying like, this is our top priority, or this is what needs to be worked on this session?
So far, I have worked on extreme heat, on legislation and creating a program for the state. I've heard some of the funding was cut in the budget, reduced. Right. So that's one of the first things I want to look at, because then the summer comes and, we're not prepared for that. I mean, all these extreme weather events, right. I think that California is experiencing, we have to have a program to respond. Right. And also, for a long time, people had worked on wildfire resiliency. This season, fortunately, we didn't have a big wildfire, a huge one like we did in the past, but doesn't mean we shouldn't forget, we still need to be prepared, right? Because sometimes it doesn't happen and then we just move on to the next issue. And then when it's happening, then we go back and try to, what are we going to do? Right. So I think, I've heard a lot from advocates about their concern in California not investing enough in climate solutions. Because, obviously we could be
which is crazy, right?
We could be in a recession, and I think we're getting used to these huge surpluses, right? And now they're getting worried, like what's going to happen? Right. Are we going to go back? We're not going to reach our goals that we've set for our state.
Well, I guess that's interesting. Like the legislative analyst just came out with a report saying just that, right? Like we're way off from where we want to be and where we are. And
yes.
I don't know if you've taken a look at that report, but kind of what are some of your thoughts on that?
Yeah. And, I think that's what like these advocates that I've been talking to are concerned that, we were supposed to be here by 2030 or by 2035, and we're not going to make it. But we're behind already. And if we stop investing, and prioritizing climate in our budget, we're not, we're not going to get there.
Right.
It's going to be much longer. And I think that's where the pressure comes in, because the world does look at us as, let's see if they can reach these goals, right? And it's not just for our state. And sometimes I think we're here in Sacramento. When I'm in the Capitol, I'm just thinking of California and my district, or Southern California, Los Angeles. But what we end up doing affects what other decisions that other lawmakers in other states or other countries, they base their decisions a lot on what California does on climate.
Yeah, so like cap and trade was supposed to raise, I guess, a lot of money, right, to help pay for some of these programs. I guess is cap and trade not performing as well as we'd hope, or?
I don't think so. That's my impression. Yeah. I wasn't here when we voted on it. I came into it. Have just recently learned more about how it all works. And I think back then when they did it, they thought, okay, this is the solution.
Right.
But I think that teaches we always have to come back and like, okay, that didn't work, or it's not working like we thought it would. What can we do now?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I guess that's kind of a cool thing. Like we were just talking off camera about how you've been here for 5 years now, right?
Almost, yes.
And so I guess when you're just first started, is that when Governor Brown did SB 100? Was that just?
Yes.
Because you came in
June of 2018.
And he gave that impassioned speech about how we're all doomed. And,
Yeah, and I was just like, where's the bathroom? I don't know where I am. And also, when you're a brand new legislator, you're just trying to navigate the whole process and, what you're supposed to do here. And then, but you're also in real time listening to what the policy and like at that time, Governor Brown and others, were focused on. So,
he had a big agenda. He did cap and trade. He did the SB 100. And it doesn't seem like since SB 100, like they've done executive orders, things like that, but there hasn't been kind of like a monumental legislative focus on that.
Well, I think sometimes, legislators try, but I think this governor, they like to do it through their powers or their
it's like the Air Resources Board does it.
Yes, regulatory, they do it. We do things now more via regulatory commissions.
Right.
And maybe the governor's office in partnership with some legislators. And I think from my impression before, and this is like when I entered, was one, maybe they'd come to a state senator or assembly member and say, oh, we think you should do this. And they would take the lead.
Yeah. You were talking about how like people are coming to you and saying, hey, we need to invest more in basically our green agenda or whatever. Kind of in your opinion, in your, expertise as being a chair these last couple of years, if, in the budget, like what should we focus? Like what has the highest return on an investment for our tax dollars and kind of this green space to kind of get us where we need to go?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, after we passed the Diablo Canyon, to keep Diablo Canyon open last year, it made me think, are we going to be in the same situation in 2030? Which we just voted.
What's going to change? Yeah.
Well, I didn't vote for it, but the legislature voted to extend Diablo to 2030. And one of the issues I had is like, what are we doing differently? And, along with some other issues I had with it. But it made me think about that, like our energy needs, transmission, and, what are we going to do between now and 2030?
Right.
And I think we should be investing in that now. Because even if you have renewable energy, like, offshore wind on the Central Coast, if you can't transmit it down to Southern California or, there's other challenges, right, that they have with that. We need to invest in that infrastructure, I think.
And so you think it's not more of a transmission issue, it's more of a infrastructure, transferring, I guess, the ability to move the power to where it's generated.
For some, I guess it depends on which type of, what energy, renewable energy source we're talking about. But from what I've heard and learned along the way, I think we do have some of those issues. And
interesting. Yeah. Another kind of issue with kind of natural resource, of course, is water. And today we're awash in it, right? It's everywhere. We have too much of it.
Are we capturing it?
Yeah.
Right? Are we capturing storm water?
How is our storm? I guess our water storage looking? And is that something that has been prioritized and kind of a lot of talk about the infrastructure to the water storage is something that maybe something we haven't invested in the past.
No, I agree. I mean, the Natural Resources Committee in the Assembly doesn't have water under its jurisdiction. In the Senate, it does. So we have a separate committee on water and in the Assembly. But, it's important, like locally in LA, a lot of people talk about that, about, like the LA Times, there was an article like, why aren't we capturing this water? We're letting it go to the ocean.
Right.
And we complain that we don't get enough rain. And so I think
now we complain we have too much.
Yes. And now it's too much, right? I remember, we have to think of both extremes, I guess.
I know in last session you did a bill on toxic lead pipes. Is that right?
Yes.
In home. Can you tell us a little bit about that legislation, kind of what you've done to kind of address that issue?
So that was, that bill would have required water agencies to notify the residents when they're replacing these toxic lead lines. They don't always notify the households. And then they also they only do like the public side, I guess, and not like the internal to, inside the house, under. So, we just want, people to be notified and for them to do that.
Wow.
Yeah. But it didn't make it.
Yeah. So is that something you're looking to bring back this year? Or?
I don't think this year.
Yeah.
We have to work more on that issue.
Right.
There's challenges that come along like any other bill that's controversial.
Yeah. Who's going to dig the pipe up, right?
Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah, there's always an issue.
Yeah. I know education's always been, something you focused on is important. And it seems like in the budget, at least, that's going to be a priority that's also of the governor's. Kind of, what are some of your thoughts on education, the state of we are right now, and kind of our look at the funding and kind of what needs to be done?
Well, what I have focused on is computer science education.
Everyone's coding, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously because of my background and, I think every child should have access to coding at school.
Right.
And we don't have that in California. I think it's maybe less than half of high schools offer computer science.
Wow.
And this is California, right?
Where like
Silicon
kids
Valley.
have like tablets, right?
But they're not being trained to be the creators of technology in the future.
Right.
They just use it. And I've always been about empowering young people to be able to create and to be future entrepreneurs and engineers and scientists, whatever, all of that. So that's been my focus. And so last year in the budget, we did get some funding for like computer science, training for teachers. I've also focused on climate change education. Kids want to learn about climate change. Like when I went to the conference in Scotland, the UN climate change, there was young people protesting because they want to know more.
Little Greta, right?
She's what, they're the youth are the reason that they're holding us accountable. Right. But I remember seeing some young people like, we need to learn about this more in school. They want, so when I see young people that want to learn about something, I get excited as an educator, because you want them to be excited when they're sitting in the classroom. Yeah. Right. And so I have a bill, I will bring it back this year on, requiring climate change, a course in climate change.
It's so interesting because when I remember being young and there was like always like a talk about like a home ec class or like auto shop and things like that. I guess that's kind of like antiquated now, right?
Yeah, so they gutted all of those shops, right?
Because I think even like driver's ed, someone came in here and said, we can't even get driver's ed anymore.
No, it used to be free.
Right.
It used to be part of the curriculum.
Exactly. But I guess the world changes, right? We don't need to drive anymore. We need to figure out how to code, right?
Yeah. No, and a lot of young people I hear don't want cars. They just take Uber everywhere. Public transportation, I'm all about. Right? I would love if we had a subway that took us everywhere. Yeah. Like on the East Coast, like New York City.
San Francisco just opened one, right?
That's true.
After 30 years.
Yeah.
So, I guess it's probably, LA has one allegedly, right?
Yeah, it's there. Yeah, and people do use it, right? I wish, but for how big the city is, it's hard.
It's amazing. Someone on Twitter, I saw a map and it showed like Europe and all their rail systems. And it was just like all the lines and it was just covered with lines. You couldn't see anything else in the United States. And it was like 10 lines over the entire country. And you're like, is that possible? Is that real? And you're like, yeah, I guess that's bizarre, right?
But I mean, there was like, I know in Los Angeles, like oil companies bought up a lot of these trolleys and different public transportation, rail that existed a long time ago. Right. And so that we would buy more cars, right?
And it worked, right?
Yeah, and it did. Everybody has a car and everyone feels they need a car.
Right. Yeah. And when you want to go somewhere, it's pretty easy just to get in and go. So new year, new session, what language deadlines coming up this week? And then you got the bill introduction deadline. Kind of what's the package? What are you looking at? And what are you excited about?
Yeah, still, looking into finalizing the package. Obviously, like I said, homelessness is a priority, climate change education, looking at, some natural resources related bills. Those are the issue areas that I work on. Yeah.
As a chair, do you carry your own natural resources bill or just like committee bills
we have a committee bill that we usually do. I think as chair of natural resources, I try to help the other members, with their bills more, make sure they're successful. Right. Assembly members and the senators, when they come, the bills come to us.
So have you introduced any bills yet or?
Not yet.
No bill numbers, just patient veteran over here.
Yeah. I'm like, no, I don't need to. Yeah, I don't need the press release. Right. Yeah. Or AB1 and, or I'm getting started right away. Right. I think this time, taking my time, making sure that what I put out is what we want to do, more thoughtful. But, as I remember as a new legislator feeling that I have to put something out now, right? And now I don't feel that pressure.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's good. That's good. So kind of what's this next kind of month look like for you then?
Ooh, like I just, I'm already getting calls from legislators that are introducing natural resources bills.
Oh, checking.
Yeah, they want to, where would you be? Yeah. And so meeting with people, seeing who the new committee members will be.
Right.
We have some open slots and actually today I don't know who's
Do
going
you
to
have
be.
input on that? Does a speaker come to you and be
Sometimes, yeah.
what do you
Like
think?
yesterday he called me and asked me about, so-and-so is interested. Are you okay with this member?
And you're like,
Sure.
no.
Sometimes,
Yeah.
I've only been committee chair for 2 years, and the committee was, we didn't have any vacancies.
How big is your committee? How many?
Oh God, is it 11 or 13? Oh my God, why do I forget
How many votes
this?
do you need to get out?
I know, yeah, that's when I know. Yeah,
Yeah.
right now I'm like, wait, how many committee members do we have?
Right.
Yeah.
What I think is funny is like there's like the shrinking number of Republicans, right?
Mhm.
But they seem to have the same number of seats on the committees.
Yeah, there's
And
always
so
a
it's
vice
like
chair.
All these Republicans are like having so many committees probably because there's
Yes,
not enough of them to go
they have a
around.
lot of committees,
Yeah.
and they're vice chairs of more than one committee.
Right.
We're like lucky to be a chair.
Right.
There's
Just
62 Democrats in the assembly.
exhausting out there.
Yeah.
So that's fun. So you got to see who your committee members are, who you're dealing with here pretty soon.
Yes. Yeah.
So that should be interesting.
And the Senate has a new natural resources chair, Senator Dave Min.
Oh, cool.
And so we're having dinner this week too
Yeah.
to discuss. He's new to being chair, so
Right.
it'll be fun to work with him.
Yeah, that's kind of I guess this is the time of year, right? You have 30 some new faces.
Yes, getting to know them.
right.
Let's have coffee. Let's go for dinner. Yeah.
Right. So yeah, how is it going meeting the new members and kind of
Yeah, I got to know
have
a
you
lot
met
of
them
them.
all yet or
In the assembly, not all, probably all the Democrats,
Mhm.
yes. The Republicans, not all, right? And I don't think I've met all the new senators yet.
just working
So,
through the list?
yes. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot
There's
of new
a lot.
people.
Yeah. And there
Hey-
will be in 24 too. I think that'll be the next round of people terming out.
Right.
I don't know how many.
The
but
the leftover from the 12 class, right?
Yeah,
The people who
they're-
stayed the actual
the
12
full
years.
12 years.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
That should be interesting. Kind of in kind of getting to know these new members. What where are they at? Are they asking you kind of questions on kind of your subject area or
A little bit on, I think there's a lot of interest in climate change and doing something about it.
Mhm.
I think they're very general
Right.
in that sense, but also just kind of like, how do I put my key in?
Right.
A lot more about the process and knowing what's going on each day.
Do you have a new desk mate?
Yes.
floor?
Diane Papin.
Okay, so she's
She's a new member.
Right.
Yeah. She's from San Mateo.
right.
Yeah. Her dad was in the assembly.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, you must have been here all the time as a kid. And she's like, no, my dad was very strict. He didn't want kids on the floor. I'm just like, you're going to teach me.
Wow.
But I like her. She's very excited to be here.
Well, great.
Yeah, I think a lot of the new members are very enthusiastic and
Yeah.
want to get to work,
Yeah.
which is exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's great.
Yeah.
Well, awesome, Luz. Well, thank you so much for taking the time
Sure.
to come and talk with us, and excited to see what you have in store for us this
Okay.
year.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Thank you.
Okay,
All right.
bye.